Welcome to Letters to Rising Leaders. It's a podcast series about God, soul, love, and leadership. And I'm your host, Tom Mohr. For those of you joining along in my book, Letters to Rising Leaders, this is week 38, and the topic is community, race. It's the first of two podcasts on the subject of community building. Today we're going to talk about racism. And I want to share a story. The year after my mom died was 1965, and that summer my dad sent me away to Camp Dudley. It was the first of what ended up being 8 years that I went to Camp Dudley. It's the oldest boys' camp in North America. It sits on the shores of Lake Champlain. It's beautiful. My whole family, my grandfather went there, my maternal uncles did, my two brothers, cousins, second cousins. It's a thing in our family, Camp Dudley. Anyway, it attracts a pretty privileged crowd, but they also had, Camp Dudley, a scholarship program that invited kids from disadvantaged backgrounds to also attend. And so on my first day there, we were organized into cabins, a bunch of 9 and 10-year-olds. And lunch comes along, and so we're ushered into Beckman Hall, which was the dining hall. And we had a table for our cabin. Well, of course, lunch progresses, and the kids are noisy, and we're all just, being kids. And the food is getting devoured at an alarming rate, of course. And we're down to one orange, and 3 kids want it. And so I begin a chant, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a..." And at that moment, Larry Williams, Larry was the only black kid in our cabin, shouted out, "Stop!" I'd been on the verge of saying, "Catch a tiger by the toe," which is the way I'd learned the chant. But then in that moment, I recalled that there was another version of the chant that substituted the word tiger for a racist word. I was absolutely mortified, just beet red, and all the kids stopped talking. And 50 years later, as I look back on that moment, I continue to wonder how Larry felt at that moment. He'd only just had his first opportunity to interact with his cabin mates that he would be with for the next 8 weeks. And in the very first moment of interacting with them, he's forced to confront racism. What courage he had. What courage he had to do that day. We came back summer after summer, Larry and I, to Camp Dudley, and we became friends. We fished and competed in sports and so forth. And I remember it was about 6 years later, I walked into a room where Larry was talking to a counselor who'd been in the Navy. And I didn't hear the question Larry had asked him, but I heard the counselor's response. He said, "Well, Larry, there's prejudice everywhere, but I do think the Navy is perhaps better than the other services in keeping doors open for blacks to rise in rank." And it hit me then, as it still does. Every day of Larry's life, he had to deal with the acid drip of racism. I have spent a life freed from snide comments, humiliating jokes, and avoidance detours on the street, and doubts about my capabilities, and in-store clerk distrust, all of those things. But that's just because of the color of my skin. A caste system exists in our society. To deny it is to deny reality. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And for those of us with privilege, we got to learn how to give it away. We got to learn first how to work on ourselves, to confront our own hidden biases, our own first filtering systems, and then to look out into our world and confront the racist comments and behavior when we see them, to see and support and empower those who did not have skin color advantages, right? I wrote a poem on this topic. It's called "Towards a Clifftop Flag." Next step, free solo towards a clifftop flag. Though footholds crumble, rainfall spurs the slip, she climbs against a downward pulling drag that wants to hold her color in its grip. Up sediment layers of bigotry's cost, scraped she climbs. Faith defeating gravity, courage summoned to leap the cross, raw she climbs. Defiant strong, past history. You who stand at top, what flies from hand? Is that a stone you cast? Or is it rope? Are you the rock this climber must withstand? Or are you one repelling line of hope? No matter which, she'll make it on her own. But blessed is the rope, and cursed the stone. To work against racism is to see those around us as Jesus sees them. To see with eyes of equity and love. The only people Jesus ever rebuked in the Bible were the privileged ones. His first step was towards those that society had pushed down. I've chosen today the song Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, not only because it's a classic black spiritual, but it's about God reaching down to lift up those who have been pushed down. Robert Berry joins me on instrumentals, and Robert and J.J. Johnson join me in harmony. Enjoy.
Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I've never seen a brighter day, coming for to carry me home. Then when Jesus washed my sins away, coming for to carry me home. I'm sometimes up and I'm sometimes down, coming for to carry me home. But still my soul feels heavenly bound, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
There's a band of angels coming after you and me, coming for to carry us home. Thank God. Well, that's it for today. I hope you'll join us next week for the next episode in this Letters to Rising Leaders podcast series. As I say each week, leader of goodness, go in faith to love and heal the world.